of the council will come to order at 7 o'clock, please. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Adams. Here. Jones. Here. Sephardi.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Brownlee.
Here.
Tujansky.
Here.
Agee. Here. Albers.
Here. May I have a motion to dispense all regular agenda items except for the legislation this evening?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Adams. Yes. Jones. Yes. Sephardi.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Brownlee.
Present.
Tujansky.
Yes.
Agee.
Yes. Legislation, please.
Ordinance number 2015-07 as amended. An ordinance amending the Maple Heights zoning map to change the zoning districts of 36 parcels in the city upon recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission in the city of Maple Heights and declaring an emergency.
May I have a motion for adoption?
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? Would you call the roll to approve, please?
Adams.
Yes.
Jones. Yes. Sephardi.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Jackson.
Yes.
Brownlee.
Yes.
Tujansky.
Yes.
Agee.
Yes.
Legislation passed 7-1. 7-0, I'm sorry. Ordinance number 2015-08, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Maple Heights, state of Ohio, for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2015, and declaring an emergency.
This will be on the first reading. We just received the projected funds, the appropriations, and what we need to do with our resources at this meeting. So I think the council needs a little bit of time to look this over, and we will come back next week and make some determinations about all of these facts and figures. Is that agreeable with all the council?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Councilman Jackson?
so we're not going to have any finance meetings between now and next week?
I don't think so.
Is that
No,
what I'm
we will have a very long discussion of the budget next week. And that will give you ample time to go over all of the facts and figures. And in the meantime, if you'd like to ask questions, I'm sure our finance director would be happy to answer any questions via email and get them back to you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Brownlee?
Perhaps since it's just been given to us and we'll have some time to look at it later, we should have a preliminary presentation as to what was changed, what we should expect as we look at it over the next week.
I think that we could do that next week,
Why not do it this week?
because I don't think anyone's prepared.
So the finance director's not prepared to give a presentation?
I think the finance director can answer that, but I think that's kind of putting her on the spot at this moment.
Well, I mean, she presented it. I think she should speak to it.
I'm going to ask the finance director to make a comment, and then we'll move on.
Sure, I can speak to that, no problem with that. And of course, if you have questions after my presentation, that will give you something to mull over during the week, next week, when we come back together. If I may, I'm going to sit. Basically, the numbers that you have here are the numbers that we have vetted very thoroughly at our last budget meeting for the temporary budget. And if you recall, those numbers for the most part were, excuse me, just reduced to 1/4 of that budget for the submission for the first quarter. There are some changes that I would like to speak to. And one of the major changes, as I had spoken since my hire here last year, is that we were in the process of overhauling the financial statements for more transparency and also for ease in accounting. If you remember that most everything was recorded in one account, others. So the finance staff and myself have spent a lot of time which was part of the delay in receiving this and trying to set up account numbers and appropriate money accordingly. This being a new procedure, I guess for several years, we may have hit it on the head and some we may not. And so I would like to have the opportunity at the discussion, for example, if it's in one account and it should move to the other, not so much changing the bottom line, but basically after I speak with my colleagues also, because they too have not had an opportunity, and I apologize, to review this. So as they go through it and look at different items, specific items, line items, we arbitrarily assign dollars based on what was trending for this year. So I just want to have that opportunity and that flexibility. So if I may, I will get started. There's 3 sections. I put separators to hopefully to guide us through this. And the first is a summary, just basically to let us know and at a snapshot, an overall view of where we are and what funds are available. So if you look at the first section, projected funds available, this is basically a snapshot of what the certificate of estimated resources will look like. And what happens is that this information will be submitted to the county, and the county will approve it and send it back. So until that time, we have only the last budget submission estimated resources available. And it's sort of self-explanatory. All of the funds are listed, and the first column, it has the unencumbered balance January 1st. And what that means is that these are the funds that were available after we accounted for all of our liabilities or POs or encumbrances. So this is like our starting balances, our fund balances they spoke at the auditor. The next column has the general property tax column. Basically, these are the funds that were sent from the county saying that this is what was projected for this year that we would receive. The next column is the local government, and like I said, these are numbers straight from county. The ones that basically are calculated and projected by the finance staff is the other sources. So these are all other source of revenues other than the general property tax for local government. These items all will be itemized under the revenue section. And so you have a column, estimated resources for 2015 is basically those 3 columns, the general property tax, local government, and other sources, to indicate the amount of revenue that's projected, new dollars to come in, and not all new dollars, but dollars to come in for this year's operations. The column says total estimated resources available takes into account the deficit that we began the year, which is the first column. So that first number, looking at the general fund, and that is the only fund that's in deficit at the beginning of the year, which is the general fund. So the general fund has a deficit that is netted against the estimated resources for 2015 to say that we have available a total estimated resources of 9 million plus. And next to that are the appropriations by the funds. And then there's an ending balance of where we expect to end up if we stay within budget, spend according to this document. You should have a fund balance deficit of 2 million plus in the general fund, which is a reduction of $683,000, which is one of the requirements of fiscal emergency is that there's a positive improvement each year to show that we're working our way out of a deficit. And so you can read this document the same as you go down. It has the various funds, what was started, and then what resources are expected to come in to show what's available, and then the appropriations, which will be itemized on the back of this document. So we look on the second page of this section. The unencumbered balance for January the 1st is projected to be, and this is unaudited, we have not had our audit for 2014, is a negative $153,037.94. We expect to bring in $19,250,622. So So the total dollars that will be available will be $19,097,584 for the whole city. And the total appropriations for the city, $17,546,10, with a fund balance of $1,005,000. Now that $1,005,000 is for the entire city, which includes special funds. It includes all the funds that you see listed here. And of course, the goal is to stay out of deficit, as they emphasized at the meeting prior to this meeting. And I think we all knew that there was a deficit in the, general fund. Madam Chair, should I entertain questions on this document?
I still think it would be a good idea to have a little bit of time to review it on our own.
Okay. The next document is the 2015 estimated resources, which you'll see parallel on the summary that I just went through. And for comparison, you have the 2013 actual resources, the 2014 actual resources unaudited, and our projection for 2015, which parallels with the first document that I read, and then also the changes. Some of the notable changes that you'll see, and as I said, we're trying to straighten out and restructure the financial statements. What we found when we went through there was a lot of others, and that may have had some duplication, other income and accounts such as that. So we went and tried to explain and unduplicate those numbers. So as you go down, I think one of the first notable changes is there's a special assessment collection towards maybe 2/3 down. It was $32,000 in 2014, and so if you analyzed it, it's $156. And a lot of those come basically from nuisance abatement calls in the police department. And then also the revenue is projected very conservative. We did not want to overestimate the revenue. We rather underestimate and get more dollars in than to overestimate and have to go back and trim the budget. But again, it is a budget, it's a plan, so we won't know until the year's over whether all of these dollars came in, or at which point we see that they may not, and somebody may want to see a revision. Also, a lot of the revenues were projected close to the prior year, since we had some history, especially our main accounts, like the RETA income tax and property taxes. But as I said, those numbers were given to us by county and local government. So the only other notable too is the traffic camera fees. If you look towards the bottom, for last year, there was $1,076,000 that we received. We're projecting to receive $112,000 this year. We're still receiving money. There was a huge receivable balance, and so we're still receiving dollars from that every week. We receive close to $3,000. So I projected, $112,000 for that. And then on the next page, the medical insurance refund right before the general fund. That was a one-time, the $64,679. That was like a one-time reimbursement. So, we're not expecting that. Also included in here are the transfer ins based on the legislation passed by this body. The $21,000 for the contingency fund, and the $200,000, which was the residual of the $600,000 from years ago of the waste management. So those were included. So the total general fund revenue, $11,786,000, is down, projected to be down $1,001,000, which is about a 9% decrease in funds. The funds below that are pretty much special funds or set aside for specific reasons, purposes. And you can go through these. They're the normal funds that we have. Some of the levy funds, street lighting, the police pension fund, fire, and of course we have the sewer. And like I say, these are pretty much our standard funds. Revenue was projected pretty much at the 2014 level. We also have 2013 compared to. So as we go down, there were on page 4, the bond retirement fund, which was one of those in question by the auditors. The bond fund will receive a $408,000 transfer from the general fund in order to meet the $1,200,000 obligation for that fund. And that's standard. As you can see, prior year was $310,000, year before it was $274,000. And of course, it depends on what the debt is for the year. It doesn't stay the same. And this is just for the debt service. There's also further down, you will come on the prior page, you'll see for the OPWC, the Ohio Public Works, and the OWDA, Ohio Water Development Association monies, and those are paid for from the sewer and maintenance fund, the assessments that we receive from the city, and that was one of the items in question. Those funds had been misapplied at December 31st, which resulted in a deficit that they quoted in the emergency, which really was not a deficit, it just that was reported in the wrong fund. So, the other change that you will notice when you go through, because these are all what I'm speaking of now, the revenue, the ambulance billing on page 3. And I know there was a question about the increase in that, and we reported that that is expected to go even a little higher based on the new computer system and accounting system that was established last year. So as you go down, you can see where there's changes and what those changes are. Hopefully to help you formulate your questions for next week. And then on page 5 of that report, the total estimated resources for 2015 is $19,256,22, which is $1,383,000, excuse me, less than 2014. So it's about a 6.7% decrease over 2014 in the total revenue for the city was projected. That concludes that. And moving on to the 2015 permanent appropriations. This document's going to look quite different because, like I said, we set a lot of new account numbers to help account for the more specific purchases that we're making versus the one account number that was labeled other administrative costs. So as you go down and send it to my colleagues, and we can talk about this, you can look at the numbers that we have arbitrarily assigned, see if there's any changes that we would like to make to those numbers or reallocate some of the funds as we go along. And one of the biggest changes, which we started last year, towards the middle of the end, was applying the fringe benefits to each specific fund versus one fund. So you'll see the health coverages, taxes, and so on, actually in those particular funds as you go down. Dispatch fund at the bottom of page 1. For the first 5 months, we're accounting for salary and wages for the dispatcher. Hopefully, for the second half of the year, there's a plan that we will join SECC, and so that's prorated for the half of the year at the $300,439. So the fund overall should show $192,000 savings based on the numbers that they pan out. On page 2, as we go down, like I said, you can read this and see those for yourself. The biggest thing on page 2 is that, of course, we are in the recreation department. There's no budget for the recreation department. If you may or may have questions, and we discussed last year about that. Page 3, mostly is the senior. We discussed that last week and also at previous meetings. And as we move on, anything else is notable on here. I think pretty much, like I say, just an overall decrease in expenses, mostly in personnel. You'll see a huge decrease in our safety forces of personnel due to separation from the city. So for the most part, like I said, everything else you can look at and see what questions you may have. And you'll see, like in the last column, the change that's projected from last year's actual. And do keep in mind that these folks with last year's actual included probably about $1 million or so of expenses from 2013 that were paid in 2014. And since the city's on a cash accounting basis, whenever the cash is dispersed, that's when the expenditures are recorded. So a lot of these expenses that you see throughout this report are attributed to 2013. So on page 10 of this report, you'll see the total for the general fund. The actual expenses of $14 million, as I've spoken, included a substantial number from 2013. And you can just see the comparison of 2013, the increase over. And 2015, we're projecting $11 million, shy of 103,942, which is about a 22% decrease from what was spent in 2014. So this is pretty much the way it goes, and below that are the other funds, police and pension, fire, and then you will see at the bottom 10, those funds, debt service that was being spoken about, the auditors, OWDA, and OPWC, which is paid out of Fund 219, the sewer and maintenance assessment, and the deficit, as I said, was created when these funds were charged to the debt service fund, and so we made the proper adjustments for that. So other than that, as you peruse the letters, give you some overview. On page 12 was another major change in the ambulance billing. I moved the police secretary from the dispatch budget and charged that to the ambulance billing along with the fire chief secretary. So that sort of straightens out some of the well, it wasn't confusion, but to have the secretary being paid out of the dispatch budget is just gave like a false impression, accounting of those funds. So now they're both in the same fund. The two secretaries for the safety forces being paid out projected for 252, the ambulance billing on page 12. And so that's something new that was not in last year's budget. But other than that, there's nothing really major that's happening, unless there's something you see when you get together again. And like I say, feel free to send me an email. Page 15, it shows the total appropriations. And so there's like a 19% decrease over 2014. So the appropriation has been substantially decreased, and as well as the revenue. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Irene.
Ordinance number 2015-09, an ordinance amending section 260-27, reducing the salaries of the mayor, the council, president, and members of council for the next term commencing January 1st, 2016 in the city of Maple Heights.
This is the second reading. And there being no further business to come before this council, this meeting is adjourned at 7:20. We will be meeting again next week at our usual time at 7 o'clock. Also, just to make a simple announcement to council, we do have a open house for the dispatch center for council members if they're interested. And that's Monday from 1 to 3, if I recall correctly. And there is a notice in your boxes. Also, the Bob Evans fundraiser is still going on tomorrow. If anyone has not been out there yet, they are donating 15% of whatever your bill is to the senior center. And I don't see the candy. No, not tonight.
They're on the front desk.
Okay, they'll be here next week. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming.